Hello and welcome to another video game story time with me, Sky Fellowship. Today's episode is a weird one because essentially it's like three topics in one, and I've been sitting here trying to actually figure out if I was going to manage to essentially make it three videos or if I'm better off just making it one video, and I think I'm going to end off making it one video and encompassing a few things because some of this is going to be a little bit of trauma dumping, essentially just the usual dysfunctional family bullshit that's in a lot of videos, and like parents that are checked out, and also coupled with the fact that because of almost dying as a kid, and it meant that I had a lot of like spare time on my hands and I wasn't doing school or anything, so there's going to be like the odd mentions to things like that basically. But I'm going to start with the fact that I grew up with some of the weirdest gaming habits around, and it's something that you only really notice when you're actually an adult and you look back on how many amazing games you did play and also how many amazing games you just simply didn't play. Because I had an N64, well, my older brother had an N64, and pretty much the moment I managed to 100% Ocarina of Time, he got rid of it. And they got me a PlayStation instead. My parents got me a PlayStation because I needed something to do, because they were always out. They were always either at work or doing other things, and I was basically completely left alone from teen years, and I needed anything to do. We didn't have satellite TV. We didn't have anything like that. So I would sit and play games, and I would usually burn through games at a pretty rapid rate. Not just because I like to speedrun games, but because a lot of times I was buying stuff that I didn't have a clue about, because this is the weird thing. I grew up in a city where gaming isn't really that popular. I knew a couple of people who played games, and most of the people who actually knew a thing about games tended to be older, and I never really got to hang out with them. And getting good gaming magazines was difficult. I would try to get a PlayStation magazine every now and then, and I never really found one I vibed with. There was literally one called N64 magazine. So finding news back in the day was actually a little bit difficult. And when I say, and this is without a word of lie, I didn't play a single RPG, JRPG, strategy RPG, anything like that at all on my PlayStation. And I know that might sound completely wild, because this is the console for RPGs. That's what everyone fucking knows it for. It's the RPG console. No one in my life played RPGs. Just no one. And the only RPG I'd actually played at that time was Pokemon Red and Blue. And maybe Gold and Silver, because Gold and Silver must have been out by that point. And I didn't know the term. I just thought that that was a Pokemon thing. I really did. So it took until, I think, the very end of the PlayStation's lifespan, I found Jade Cocoon right at the end of it, and that's kind of the only RPG I played a little bit, and it was already such an old game, and we were moving on to the next consoles, and I actually needed to sell my PlayStation. There's this whole thing, so I never played any of the big RPGs. For me, for the most part, the PlayStation was the fighting console and Resident Evil. And there was definitely a bunch of other games. Like, my PlayStation library was about 80 discs large by the time 80 games large, I should say, because some discs obviously had multiple discs, although usually that was the JRPGs, and obviously I didn't really have any of them. As I say, so for the most part, I had fighters, I had some Resident Evil games, some shoot-em-ups, I had a bunch of stuff that, like Retro Force, an old shoot-em-up that I don't think anyone will even really remember, and I had a load of things that I've honestly never really heard many people discuss, and even looking through recent files and everything, trying to actually find some of these games, I'm like, yeah, there's just no footage of some of the controllers I used to use. There's no images, there's no pictures, there's no footage of the games that I used to play. Sometimes it turns out it's because they had a different name in other countries. Sometimes they were literally exclusive to the UK. And I've got another video about to come out. I haven't recorded it yet, but I'm going to be talking about the fact that I have eventually found one of my lost games. Now, I actually found it a long time ago, and there's even a review of the game up on my channel. But there's other games as well that I've found that I'm just like, oh my god, I can't believe I finally discovered you again, or rediscovered you. But yeah, my library made up mostly of fighting games. And where the problem comes in was, when my parents used to fuck off to work, and I had nothing to do, basically, in lieu of pocket money, or allowance, or whatever you want to call it, I would get one game pretty much a week to try to last me a week. However, because of budgeting, it was usually bargain basement games. And this is when I really wish I could have went back in time and explained to both myself and my parents, hey, there's these games called Final Fantasy, and like all of these games like Grandia and Xenogears, although to be fair, I see that some of these games I know fine well I don't think actually came out in the UK. I don't think we ever got Xenogears, I could be wrong with that. I know it's like how we never got Chrono Trigger until the DS port, and then we eventually got the SNES port something like 13 years after it came out. We got Earthbound 18 years after it came out. So that's also part of the other thing. Like, RPGs just were not that popular here at the time. So I wish I could have went back in time and essentially explained, listen, you'll get a lot more money, like a lot more bang for your buck, if instead of buying one game a week, you make it one game a month, because I could almost guarantee a game like Final Fantasy will last longer than some of the stuff that I was ending up having to get. Like, when the caliber of games is, and I say this lovingly, because I do love Gauntlet, I've got videos about Gauntlet up already, but Gauntlet Legends was pretty much the best game I managed to get outside of Street Fighter 2, and it's one of those, I know I'm playing Street Fighter X Plus at this moment in time, which I think might have been a rental, to be honest, but it's close enough, it's Street Fighter. But I would also get games like Celebrity Deathmatch and Simpsons Wrestling and loads of really nashy bargain basement stuff that you'd beat in half a day, which would then have parents complaining that they've spent the money on something that you've beat so quick. And it's like, yeah, because I didn't know any better, I didn't know what genres to go for, I didn't have a lot of stuff, and eventually it got to the point where once I started to discover games like Resident Evil, suddenly people were like, hey, listen, there's other Resident Evil games out there, and there's games like Chase the Express, which is called Covert Ops in America, and I was able to slowly build a library of games that I wouldn't simply beat in a day. And even if I did beat them in a day, it's the kind of games that you'd replay over and over again. I never replayed Simpsons Wrestling, just at all. It was a one and done. Gauntlet, I at least replayed a bit. Street Fighter, I will always play through the arcade mode with every character. It's something that I like to do. It's something that you can practice on harder difficulties all the time. So I did get some value out of it. But yeah, it's one of those weird things where I managed to grow up with an N64 and a PlayStation, and I did eventually get the N64 back. But for the longest time, I would always say the N64 was for quality and the PlayStation was for quantity. Because N64 games, I would usually somehow find the biggest of the bigs. So your Ocarina of Times, your Majora's Mask, your Star Wars Rogue Squadrons, your Diddy Kong Racings, your Smash Brothers, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Perfect Dark. And those games I would play so much to the point of that I actually broke the Perfect Dark cartridge. That video will be out at some point. But yeah, I would have all of these like amazing quality games that I would constantly come back to. But the PlayStation, outside of the likes of Resident Evil and that, I mainly had a load of the, I don't want to say lower tier games, because there are still some great games, and fighting games are something I've always grown up and loved, but stuff that I wouldn't spend a lot of time on. And I did eventually get like an N64 back, and I had the PlayStation and the N64 side by side, and I would basically have a bunch of like £5 to £10 really cheap PlayStation games, and the stack, as I say, it was massive. I had about 80 games at one point, and eventually, when it was coming to the end of the console's lifespans, I still kept thinking, yep, the PlayStation's quality, the PlayStation's quantity, the N64's quality, and I used that quantity to actually trade in all of my PlayStation stuff to get a black Game Boy Advance and 3 Game Boy Advance games, but not for me, for my little brother, which turned out to be a waste, on top of the fact that, right, he was in that annoying phase where he wanted it because I had it. So I actually was trying to be the nice older sibling and help out, and my mother was like, are you sure you want to trade all of this? It's all stuff that's yours. And it's like, I mean, on a technicality, you bought most of this anyway, so I'm fine with it. So I got a game for myself, and then we got him 2 games, and he played it for like a week and then never touched it again. And it was just like, yeah, kind of a waste to trade all of those games for that. I ended up stopping doing stuff like that, and when I sold collections, it was to fund stuff for myself. Like when I eventually had to get rid of my Dreamcast collection, I funded my Switch with it. Seriously, all of my old Dreamcast stuff, I bought a Switch, all of the stuff that I needed, Breath of the Wild, like it funded the entire thing. So yeah, I always kept games in good condition. Turns out I actually bought games relatively cheap that worked out to actually be quite expensive. When I got my Dreamcast, I bought a bundle of 8 and 20 games for about 80 quid, and I sold just 3 of the games from it that I had no interest in. Some of them were Shenmue. I managed to sell them for more than the cost of the bundle within the first week, and then everything else actually started to appreciate in value as well. But I was always pretty good at actually selling old games. But anyway, so as much as this has been like a kind of ramble video, and I know it has, it's to say that all these years later, I've been setting up being able to actually play the PlayStation and record videos, and I'm going through the list and I'm just like, so all this time that I was like, the PlayStation had quantity and no quality, and the N64 had quality and no quantity. The PlayStation's actually got some quite good quality. It's just that Final Fantasy was never on my store shelves. The one day I actually finally found Final Fantasy VII on disc in my local game store, because I'm not just saying it wasn't just my social circle that didn't play RPGs. I just never saw most of these games in my store. And the one day I found Final Fantasy VII, the PlayStation 3 had been out for about 3 years, and I actually had been trying to get a copy of it to finally play it. I've still not played it. So many people have spoiled that game for me that now I'm actually waiting until the final part of the remake trilogy's out, and then I'll just finally play it. But I picked it up, and I actually said to the guy behind the counter, I cannot believe you have this. Like, this wasn't even in this store when I was young and coming here. And he's like, so I've been working here that long, but I can tell you that, yeah, any game like this, just, it arrives and it sells the same day. And I have a feeling it's about to do it again, because that literally got flagged on the system today and got put out half an hour ago. It's like, yeah, you're right, it's going to sell today. Add it to my order, please. So yeah, going through though, going through to be able to set up this experiment here to be able to record PlayStation videos, it's not just Final Fantasy, it's not just some of the famous games. I found so many absolutely fantastic games that I'm really looking forward to actually being able to play now and being able to maybe record videos on eventually. It's honestly staggering how perspectives can change, and it's purely just from lack of information. It's almost as if like educating yourself, removes ignorance. And I was definitely ignorant to a fuck ton of the PlayStation's library. So yeah, this weird ramble video is coming to an end, and I'm gonna eventually record a bunch more PlayStation stuff. I know fine well I am, because I cannot believe how well PlayStation games have actually aged and how amazing. I'm having a lot of fun just fucking around button mashing on Street Fighter X, which I would love for this game to actually come out in a modern collection again so I can play it again with a fight stick. I'm this close to actually buying an original PlayStation 1 fight stick just to be able to play this game properly instead of using a fucking controller. But yeah, I'm surprised, because I've been on a retro kick lately anyway. I've been playing a bunch of N64 stuff, and I'm like, you know what? There's a bunch of N64 games that have aged exceptionally well. They still play really well. But again, it's those quality games. The rest of the library that was always a bit hit or miss, I'm finding I'm really struggling to play it. And I'm like, you know what? I really am thinking that this game, like this system, was the one of the quality, not the quantity, because yeah, there's just so much crap. So to then get to the point where I'm building this PlayStation library to be able to play again, and I'm like, okay, so it turns out PlayStation actually had quantity and quality. I just grew up in a shithole backwards area. Like, one of the reasons that this might have became multiple videos, I might as well actually fit it in here, and this is, I was trying to figure out a way if I could actually do it. We didn't really used to have arcades. We had 3 arcades growing up: Selden's Lair, The Jet, and The Crow's Nest. And I'm pretty sure I'm fine to mention those names, because firstly, I'm not going to actually say anything inflammatory about them or anything. But I'm also pretty sure Selden's Lair, I think, is the only one that actually still exists. And it's no longer that kind of arcade at all. And basically, you had The Crow's Nest, which would have a couple of arcade machines in it. Believe it or not, when one of the more famous games was the likes of Pit Fighter, it had Pit Fighter, it had Mutant Fighter, it had a really good Spider-Man arcade game, which just never comes out on anything. They've just recently done the Maximum Collection at the time of recording this video, and I thought of all the places that would be where they'd put it. Nope, still not available. It was the first game that I ever actually experienced Hawkeye and got into Hawkeye because of that game, so I really wish it would actually come out. I don't even know the full name. It might simply be something like Spider-Man the arcade game. But we had The Crow's Nest, which had a couple of arcade games, like a couple of good things, like Bubble Bobble and that. Selden's Lair had even less variety, but what it did have was at least it had like a Street Fighter machine, if memory serves. The Jet was the one where you went there as an absolute last resort because the games it had were things that no one really cared about or played. A couple places might have had something like a Final Fight or a Golden Axe, but we didn't really get that many of the popular games, and we didn't really get that many new games. And what would usually happen is, when they would actually get rid of one of the video games, they would replace it with an actual, like, pay money to win money machine. I'm trying to avoid certain words, not because I'm trying to avoid being demonetized, but apparently videos are actually getting taken down if you say the G word these days, and it's like, what the fuck? Because I'm not even promoting it. The UK government kind of was, because despite this being illegal for children to do, they actually got... I don't even want to say got around this. There was basically the cheap machines where you would pay 2 pence to 5 pence, and you could win maximum like £8 on a jackpot. And then the adult section was where you could get the like actual fruit machines, where you could pay 25 pence, a pound every spin, and you could win like £25 jackpots on that. When they actually started to replace video games with that, I was really disappointed, up until the fact that I actually found a machine that was broken. And it was broken in the way of my autistic ass could read the pattern, and I always knew when it was actually going to drop the jackpot. I funded an entire year's worth of GameCube games just going into this one place with £1 and turning that £1 into £16 every single time I went there, to the point of the people who used to actually run the arcade. We've always got on with them. They were always really nice to us. They were always amazing. They actually cared about games. There were people that... They always got a bad rap, for some reason, amongst everyone, but they were always super nice to me, and maybe it's because I wasn't an asshole to them, but one of them noticed me winning yet again, and he's like, didn't you win last week as well? And it's like, yeah. It's like... That seems a little suspicious, and it's like, I mean, I guess it's just luck. By the next week, that machine had been fixed. He waited until I'd put more money than I usually did into the machine, and he was like, yeah, you'll find your luck's ran out. It turns out it was set to drop the jackpot 20% more than the other machine. They're both now on the same odds, and it's like, okay, thanks for letting me know, and I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to sit there and be an arsehole. I'm not going to say, well, you could have told me that before, because of course I'd just like taken over the entire summer like 150 quid out of them machines, just, you know, so I'm not going to complain about giving £2 back to them, you know. Yeah, it was that kind of arcade, though, growing up. Like, every time a game came out, it was an actual real money machine that went in. So, one of them did have a Simpsons, I've just remembered. One of them did at least have a Simpsons, and one of them had a Turtles, but then they replaced it very quickly. The Simpsons, meanwhile, stayed there until it broke and was completely unplayable. But yeah, all of this to say, I grew up in a place where gaming really wasn't that fucking important to, like, anyone, sadly. So I really did miss out on a ton. And it's really weird to hear a bunch of people on videos recently saying, I mean, I would have killed to have had the PlayStation growing up. I would have killed to have had the N64 growing up. And I'm like, I was actually... I don't want to say lucky. I almost died. I come from a dysfunctional family. There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of abuse. I truly am not lucky. I'm unlucky as you can be, being born in this kind of family. I unfortunately am. But from a gaming standpoint, I was lucky enough to have both systems, but I still missed out on so much purely because of just being a dumbass kid and having no access to any of this stuff. And yeah, that's ultimately why this video is kind of like 3 topics in one, and I don't really know what to entitle it. I'll figure something out, and you'll have seen it anyway, because like you'll have seen it clicking on the vid, and this is the end of the vid. And yeah, until next time, which I don't find while I'm about to record a video on Team Buddies, I will say I've been Sky Fellowship. I truly do hope you have a great rest of your day. And yeah, if there are any games at all that you grew up missing out on because they simply didn't exist to you, because I've told stories about my secondhand shops and that before. Seriously, the only things that really got stocked were the likes of Die Hard Trilogy, Duke Nukem, Doom. It was all like more adult games. And I played through all of them because, again, like, I played through whatever I had access to, really. But then when Blockbuster started doing the whole bargain bin thing, it was mostly fighters. I missed out on so many genres. Like, I didn't even get to play the likes of Gran Turismo, and that's fine, because I actually don't like realistic races. But there's so many truly... Like, Metal Gear, I didn't know a fucking thing about Metal Gear until the GameCube version came out, Twin Snakes, and then suddenly it was like, wait a minute, I could have been playing Metal Gear on this fucking thing? Are you kidding me? So yeah, like, if there's any massively overrated or underrated games or anything like that you never got to experience, and I don't know why I said overrated. Overrated's a bad thing. I think you know what I mean. If there's any massively highly rated games or any games that, like, even hidden gems that not many people brought up, but you were at least glad to have been on the, like, ground wave of, and maybe now they're starting to get a bit more love, post in the comments. Let me know, because honestly, I'm actually trying to go back through a back catalogue and build a library of games that I might want to eventually own and play through. So yeah. This outro has been very long, but again, it's a ramble vid, and maybe that's literally what I'm going to call it. Maybe I'm just going to call it the PlayStation N64 Arcade Ramble vid, something weird like that. It is April 1st at this moment in time, so maybe I can get away with naming it something dodgy. Anyway, until next time, bye!